We're in Shabbos, Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. We learned about the Machlokes Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai argue about Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin. To be yotze the mitzvah of Chanuka, you light one candle every night, no matter how many people are in your home. The second level is Mahadrin, where you light one candle for each person in your home. So if there are 4 people in the home, 4 on the first night, 4 on the second night, 4 on the sixth night, etc. Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, the beautiful of the beautiful. Beis Shammai says 876543321, and Beis Hillel says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We learned last week there are 2 sets of reasons for why Beis Hillel holds the way they hold and Beis Shammai holds the way they hold. The question we dealt with last week was, is level 3 built on level 2? And that's a machlokes in Tosfos and other Rishonim. We read the Rambam. So the minig of the Sfardim is to light, like Beis Hillel, obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but to only have one menorah for the whole family. Not to have every person have a menorah, because level 3, Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, is not built on the Mahadrin. Our minig b'nei Ashkenaz is that each person lights his own menorah and does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's the shita of Ramah, the shita of the Ashkenaz. Okay, so now we're back in the Gemara, and the Gemara said, about 14 lines from where the lines get wide. Before the lines get wide, the lines get wide towards the bottom. About 14 lines before that, the Gemara says, Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Zakeinim Hayu B'Tzidan. There were 2 elderly Zakeinim, there were 2 Zakeinim, one would assume Talmidei Chachamim, that lived in Sidon. Echad Osik Beis Shammai, one followed Beis Shammai and lit 876543321. The Echad Osik Divrei Beis Hillel, and one did like Beis Hillel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Zenos and Tam Lidvar Keneged Pri Achag. When they asked the Zokain who followed Beis Shammai, why are you doing 876543321? So he gave one of the 2 reasons for Beis Shammai, because the korbanos, the bulls that were brought on Sukkot, were 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. And so I light 8764321. And the one that lit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like Beis Hillel, he explained his reason was, Beis Hillel's reason, Mailam Bakodesh V'lo Maridin, when you're doing a mitzvah, you go up, you ascend, you don't descend. So we asked a question last week, how is it possible that someone is lighting Chanuka candles, a Zokain, a Talmud Chacham, and he's lighting according to Beis Shammai? You're not allowed to follow Beis Shammai. The halacha is like Beis Hillel. So the Rishonim asked that. I'm going to read a Ravid to you. The Ravid asked this question, and the Ravid says, Shiny Chacha. This case is different. She'emach lakosam elehidur mitzvah ba'alma. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are not disagreeing about the mitzvah. What is the most basic mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah? 1 candle every night. And as we explained last week, let's say it's the 6th night. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kishon mitzvayis v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher snis l'avoseinu b'yomim hahem b'zman hazeh. You light the candle. Now you're going to light 5 more because it's the 6th night. Now this mitzvah is broken in 2. As soon as you lit the first mitzvah, you did the mitzvah. As soon as you lit the first candle, you're finished with the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, because every night you only have to light 1. Why are you lighting an additional 5? Hidur, you want to make the mitzvah more beautiful. So in this case, since the disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is not about the halacha of how to do the mitzvah, it's about how to beautify the mitzvah. But everyone agrees that after you light the first candle, you've done the mitzvah. The shaila is, how do you beautify it? Beautify it, Beis Shammai says 876543321. Beautify it, Beis Hillel says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's no disagreement about the mitzvah. Disagreement is in beautifying the mitzvah. Therefore, here it was permitted for this elderly Talmud Chacham in Sidon to decide to beautify the mitzvah according to Beis Shammai. Nevertheless, this is not something that we do. We do Beis Hillel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Tana Rabbana, new Sugya. Tana Rabbana. Ner Chanuka, mitzvah lanicha al Pesach Beisai mibachutz. The mitzvah of Ner Chanuka is to put it at the door, the opening of your door towards the outside. Now here we're going to have a machlekes Rashi and Tosfos, which is a machlekes in the Poskim. We have to remember how communities were built in those days. If you've been following at all Masechta Eruvin with the Daf Yomi, you get a picture of how they used to build communities. You have to imagine, first of all, I should have gotten a picture of Masechta Eruvin. What they did was, take my Gemara, use my Gemara. They would build, let's say, we'll call this a chotzer, a courtyard. This courtyard would have numerous houses in it. Each house would open into the general courtyard. So this was what we call today a common area, the chotzer, the courtyard. This group of houses and courtyard would have another chotzer. And in here, there would be a courtyard with another group of houses. And this area in between would be the street. So you have a chotzer with houses here, a chotzer with houses here, and in between you have a street. And without getting into Masechta Eruvin, the common area that's shared by all the houses is called the chotzer. The common street that runs between the two chotzers is called the mavui. Okay? And there are all kinds of halachas of where you can carry and where you can't carry on Shabbos. Now, the Mishnah, this memra in the Gemara says the mitzvah of Ner Chanuka. Look at the words. Mitzvah Tana Rabbana Ner Chanuka. Mitzvah lanicha al Pesach Beisai. The mitzvah is to put it outside the door of your house. Mi bachutz, outside. I put it at the door of your house outside. So let's see. Get a piece of paper. Here you have a chotzer. The chotzer has 3 houses in it. Each house has a door to leave the house into the common area chotzer. Then there's an opening from the chotzer into the street. So when the Gemara says the mitzvah is to light the Ner Chanuka at the opening of the door outside, are we talking about here? Well, forgetting about now right side or left side. Which outside are we talking about? The Chanuka menorah should be at the outside of your door or the outside of the chotzer. I have a door that leaves my house into the chotzer, and then there's a door that leads from the chotzer into the public street. When the Gemara says, put the Ner Chanuka at the door of your house outside, is this outside or is this outside? There are 2 possibilities to read that. So let's take a look at what Rashi says. Rashi says, Mi bachutz. Why do you have to light the Chanuka candles outside? So we all know the reason. What is the ikr? What is the tam for lighting Neiros Chanuka?
Parsume Nisa.
2 words. Parsume Nisa, to publicize the miracle. So therefore you want to light it in a public place. So Rashi says, Mi bachutz, mishum parsume Nisa, to publicize the miracle. V'loi b'rishus harabim, you don't light it in the rishus harabim. Ela b'chatzeroi, you light it in your courtyard. Shebateim hoyipsuchem l'chatzer. Their houses were open to the chatzer. So Rashi says, do not light it in the rishus harabim here. Light it at the opening of your door in the chatzer over here. That's where Rashi's telling you to light it, at your door opening into the chatzer. Rashi says, not in the rishus harabim. Read the Rashi again. Mi bachutz, you light it outside. Mishum parsume nisa. V'loi b'rishus harabim, not in the public domain. Ela b'chatzeroi, in your courtyard. Shebateim ho'ipsuchem l'chatzer. Their homes were open into the chatzer, so you light it in the chatzer. Over here, not over here. Let's take a look at Tosfos. Tosfos says, mitzvah lanich al pesach beisa mi bachutz. Umayri, the lek chatzer, el abayis omeid samach l'shus harabim. First Tosfos says, our Gemara is discussing a case where there is no courtyard. A person's front door opens right into the rishus harabim. And therefore, where you're going to light, if a person has a house, that opens directly into the rishus harabim, he has to light at his front door, and it will be in the public domain, right outside his front door. Now, Tosfos says, "Avalum yesh chotzer lifnei habayis," but if there is a chotzer in front of your house, so what did Rashi say? Light it at the front door in the chotzer. Tosfos says, "Mitzvah laniach al pesach chotzer." The mitzvah is to put it here, at the opening of the chotzer. Rashi said, in this case, houses in a chotzer open to rishus harabim, do not light it at the rishus harabim, light it at the door of your house in the chotzer. Tosfos says, if your house is open to a chotzer, don't light it at your house opening, light it at the chotzer opening into the rishus harabim. So that's a machlokes Rashi Tosfos. What is the mi bachutz? What does it mean outside? Okay. Im hoyedor baliyah. What happens if you don't live on the first floor? You live on the second floor. You live in an attic. Where do you light your neighbor's Chanuka? Manicha b'chaloim hasmucha l'rishus harabim. You can put it in a window that opens to the rishus harabim, and people can see it from there. Not everybody lives on the first floor of a house, and therefore they don't have a door that opens to the chotzer. If this house is 3 floors high, where are the people on the second floor light? Where are the people on the third floor light? So the Gemara says that you can put it in the window in those cases. Today, as you know, when you walk by apartment buildings in Eretz Yisrael, people pile up their menorahs in those glass boxes, one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, because everybody wants to light it outside. But if there's no room where you can halachically light it outside properly, because the whole area is occupied with everyone else's menorah, or whatever other problem there may be, there is no issue. You can light it in the window that faces rishus harabim. Ubishas hasakana, and when it gets dangerous to light your menorah in a public place, because you're worried the goyim are going to harm you, chas v'sholom, do damage. Manich al shulchanoi, you can put it on your table, v'dayoy, and that's enough. At a time when it's dangerous and you're scared to even put it in your window, you put it in your window, and the goyim know that on the second floor there's a Jew living, and he's putting his Chanuka candles in the window. Let's go get him. So if you're scared of that, it's that kind of sakana. You don't even have to put it in the window. Just light it on a table in your house, and the persume nissa will be for your immediate family who sees you lighting. Now, this is what we discussed earlier on when we were learning the Gemara. During the years of Golus, it became dangerous in many countries to light Hanukkah candles. We know that a certain other holiday comes out that time, and Goyim were very makbid that there should be nothing in the windows except their stuff. If you put a menorah in the window, they went crazy and did crazy things. So it became a shas sakana in many places. And therefore, the Hanukkah menorah was brought inside and put on a table. And then as the sakana dissipated over time, people were not confident yet enough to bring the menorah back outside their homes. So they brought it to the windows. And so remember, growing up, wherever you grew up in America, etc., you put your Hanukkah menorah where? In the window. I don't remember anybody in America that I ever saw lighting their Hanukkah menorah outside the door of their house. I don't remember such a thing. So when it became a sakana, people put the menorah on the table. Nobody saw it except the family. When the sakana began to dissipate, they started putting it into the windows, but they did not feel confident to go back and put it outside their homes. Baruch Hashem, today in Eretz Yisrael, we are able to go back to the very first step and the halacha lechatchila and put it outside our doorways or outside the entrance to the building. Now, again, there's going to be a lot of halachas. We'll see if we get time to learn it before Hanukkah. You notice that there are some people that when you walk into an apartment building, they light their Hanukkah menorah next to the door in the hallway. They don't light it outside. If you ever walked into some apartment buildings, there are menorahs in the hallway on the left side of the doors. There's some people that put them at the entrance to the building. There's some people that put it at the entrance to the Chanaya. There are all kinds of minhagim about where to actually put it. But Baruch Hashem, we're in a situation today where we can have this conversation. Where should I put my menorah outside? There are still many, many people that have the minhag in Eretz Yisrael to continue lighting inside and not to light outside, because I don't know why. It's Azoyis Geven, Azoy Daf Mentiyin. This is how we did it in the Haim, and this is how we do it now. So we're not going to change anything, even if you talk to these people and you say the reason in the Haim you did it that way is because of sakana. But if it's not a sakana, you don't need to do it that way. You can do the mitzvah outside your home. They say, no. Azoy is nicht gewein by the Tatan, Azoy is nicht gewein by the Zayda, Azoy is nicht gewein by the elder Zayda. I understand. They were in Poland, they were in Ukraine, I understand. It's a different situation today, and it's very easy to do the mitzvah min hamuvcha. Okay, we understand, we've talked about this. This runs across the gamut of different things. Now that we've come to Eretz Yisrael, we have so many different opportunities to do so many mitzvahs that we weren't able to do till now. So there are people that have been able to move forward with the progress that we're making. I'd be a skirl tzedek, and there are people that say, no, if there's any progress to be made, Mashiach will tell me about it. Other than that, I'm doing whatever I did in the Ukraine. Okay, that's that piece of Gemara. Amar Rava says, Tzorich ner acheres lehishtamesh la'oiver. This is going to begin a whole confusing sugya. We're going to try to keep it simple, because this Gemara, Al Pi Pashit, according to the Pashpshat, has nothing to do with what we call the shamish. There are two things, two candles. Besides the Chanuka candles, there's something we call the shamish. And the shamish we use to light each candle. And we'll see why we don't light from one Chanuka candle to another. Are you allowed to, for example, bend the wick of wick 6, bend it over to wick 5 and light 5 from 6, and then 4 from 5, and 3 from 4? Do you need a shamish? Can you light one from the other? We'll see that in the Gemara. But the shamish basically did away with this problem. You don't light one Chanuka candle from another Chanuka candle. Now, Rabbi said, do you understand why? We understand why there could be a problem. Because the first candle you lit is the mitzvah. Every candle after that is only a hidur. So can you light a hidur from the mitzvah? Okay, so keep that always in cheshbon. The first candle is mitzvah, after that is hidur. So we get away from this whole problem. We light a candle, we call it the shamish. And with the shamish, we light all the other candles. Okay. Chazal had something else. They called it a ner nosaf. And this is brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Ner nosaf means that every night of Chanuka, you lit an extra candle. Nothing to do with shamish. On the first night, you lit a second candle, and you didn't put it into the menorah. You put it next to the menorah. On the fourth night, you lit a fifth candle, and you put it near the menorah. Why? The Gemara explains. Amar Rava, tzorich ner acheres leishtamish la'oira. You should always have another candle next to your Chanuka menorah so that you can use the light. Remember, we already paskin that asur leishtamish la'oira. Earlier in the Gemara, we had 3 shittas about whether you can use the flickering wicks and the flickering oils of Shabbos, can you use it on Chanuka? And we said, yes, you can use it on Chanuka, even on Shabbos. Why? Because you won't come to adjust the Chanuka candle. Why? Because asur leishtamish la'oira. Haneres halalu kodesh ve'ein lanu reshush leishtamish b'hem. You're not allowed to read next to a Chanuka candle. Now, in those days, if you lit your candles inside your home, now what are you going to do? The candle, you lit the Chanuka candles. It's Tuesday night. You lit the Chanuka candles on your kitchen table in your little tiny home. Does that mean that nobody can walk into the kitchen now? Nobody can eat at the table? They were living in tiny little places. You lit your Chanuka candles inside. Now, what am I supposed to do? Not walk into that room for a half an hour? What should I do now?
You turn on another.
Chazal said, add another candle. Wherever you're going to light the Chanuka menorah, light a ner nosaf, light an additional candle. Therefore, when you walk into the room, you're able to therefore assume that the light you're using is from this ner nosaf, not from the Chanuka candles. So, Amar Rava, tzorich ner acheres l'shtamish la'oira. With the Chanuka candles, add another candle, not the shamish. Add another candle as the ner nosaf, so that if you walk into the room and you tie your shoes in the room, or you're doing something else in the room, there's another light that's not Chanuka light that you can be using. V'ika medura. What happens if you lit your Chanuka candles in a room where there's a medura? Maybe there's a fireplace. You have a fireplace in your kitchen. So that fireplace is already giving off light. Light tzarech. If the Chanuka candles are in a room that has a medura, it has a large fire in it, maybe it's the kitchen. You have the Chanuka candles, the Chanuka menorah on the kitchen table. And somewhere near the kitchen table, your wife is cooking on a big flame. You don't have to add the extra candle because there's a big flame in the room from which you're getting light. The Adam Choshevu, but if the Balabayas of the house is an Adam Choshev, he's a prestigious person, Afal gav the ikar medura, even if there's a big flame in the room, tzorach ner acheres, you have to light a ner nosaf, an extra candle, because choshev people did not tie their shoes near a fireplace. They didn't tie their shoes next to the cooking fire, simply because sometimes it was dangerous to get that close to a big flame. So a choshev person, a wealthier person, a choshev person, would have a specific candle lit so that he can tie his shoes, he can read whatever he's doing. So therefore, if you're lighting Chanuka candles inside because it's a sakana, you should add a ner nosaf. Again, this is not the shamash. You add the ner nosaf so that if you walk into the room, you won't be using the light of the Chanuka menorah, which is kodesh. If there's a large flame in the room, like a fireplace, you don't have to add the ner nosaf, because anything you do in the room, the light will be coming from that big flame. If it's an adam chashuv, an important, prestigious person, even if there's a large flame in the room, you still add the extra ner nosaf so that he would be able to tie his shoes, whatever he's doing, read a book, using the ner nosaf. Rashi says, manicha, a person that lives on the second floor, third floor, and doesn't have a door by which he can light his Chanuka menorah, manicha mi befnim kineged chalain hasamach l'shusarabim. You can light the Chanuka menorah inside at a window that faces the public domain. Rashi says hasakana, and during the time of danger, the Persians had a law. During our time of Hanukkah, there was some kind of Persian holiday, a Goyisha Avodah Zorah holiday. Rashi quotes a Gemara in Gittin that the Persians had this day of celebration which worked out during Hanukkah. And they made a law that candles can't be lit at night in a sort of a public way, except in their houses of Avodah Zarah. So it became a sakana to light Hanukkah candles during this time. So therefore, they lit Hanukkah candles in the house, on the table, not at the window. And the Pasum Nissa, the publication or the publicity of the miracle was done to the family that gathered around the table. As we discussed, Baruch Hashem, Bisman Hazeh, Eretz Yisrael, there's no sakana, and we, Baruch Hashem, many people have gone back to lighting the menorah outside. Rashi says that if you light your ner Chanukah on the table, you need a ner nosaf. You need to light another candle. So on night 4, you would light a 5th candle, not part of the menorah, but near the menorah. Lasois hekeladova. Rashi gives us the same explanation as he gave us on top, that the whole purpose of Hanukkah is lighting the menorah is parsuminis, so to publicize the miracle, to the extent that you light Hanukkah candles in a way that people think that you're lighting it for your own personal light. He lit this thing in his room, and he's reading a book next to it. This has nothing to do with Hanukkah. It's his own personal use. We always are sensitive to the idea that wherever we light and how we light, there should be a parsume nissa that people can recognize this is Neiros Hanukkah. So if you're lighting in your house and you put it on the kitchen table because it's Shas Sakana, then the only parsume nissa is for your immediate family. If your immediate family sees you tying your shoes using the Ner Chanukah, reading a book at the Ner Chanukah, your family does not understand that what you've done is l'kavod Chanukah and l'kavod the Nes of Chanukah, because you're using it for your own personal reasons. So in order to make it recognizable that Hanevas Halolu Koideshem Eilanu Rishus L'Shtamish Behem, so if you're lighting it on the table, you add another candle, put it on the table, and then people know that the Chanukia is only for Hanukkah and can't be used for anything else. and you're tying your shoes because there's an extra candle. However, Rashi says, if you don't need an extra candle, again, Rashi says, if you have a huge flame, a fireplace in the room, you have a fireplace in the kitchen, the Chanuka is on your kitchen table, and there's a fireplace in the room, you don't have to light an extra candle, because when you want to tie your shoes, you can use the fire coming from the fireplace, and the Chanuka on the table is recognizable that it's Hanukkah. Then the Gemara said, Rashi said, the Odom Chashafu, and if it's a prestigious, important person, prestigious people do not tie their shoes at huge fireplaces. They get candles by which to do their own private things. Then this important person, even if he lit Hanukkah candles on the kitchen table, and even if in the kitchen there's a huge fireplace, he's going to have to add the extra candle, because everyone knows that an Adam Choshev is not going to be using the big flame. And if he wants to tie his shoes, he's going to need a small flame. And if he doesn't have an extra candle, people will say he's using the Hanukkah candles for his own personal use, and the Hanukkah candles are not Hanukkah candles. So an important person, even if there's a big flame in the room, he has to add the Ner Nosef. Okay. So we've learned a tremendous amount about Hanukkah. We started on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, the oils and the wicks that flicker on Shabbos and can't be used. Halacha, you can use them on Hanukkah weekday, because kafsa ein zokogla. If it burns out, you don't have to relight it. And you can use it on Shabbos because you won't adjust it, because it's also l'shtamish l'ori. You're not allowed to use the Ner Hanukkah. We learned that the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah is from sundown until the Talmudoi, those people who sold branches, were no longer in the street, which for us means 30 minutes. We learned that you have to have enough oil and wick in the Hanukkah menorah to last 30 minutes. Even if it goes out within the 30 minutes, that's okay. But if you only put enough oil and wick in the menorah that can only last 20 minutes, you're not yotze the menorah. If you put in 30 minutes worth and it blows out, that's okay. If you want to go relight it, that's also okay. We learned about how to light Hanukkah. 3 levels. 1 candle for the whole house. You can add a candle for each person, or you can do 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 Beis Shammai, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Beis Hillel. Then we learned, where do you light the Hanukkah candles? Outside. Rashi in the courtyard. Tosfos basically to the opening of the Rosh Hashanah, or the opening to the Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Then we learned, what do you do when it's a sakana? Put it on the table inside. Then we learned about, if you're doing it on the table inside, you need an Ner Nosef, an extra candle. Except if there's a big flame, you don't need it. On the other hand, Adam Chashav still needs it. So we've learned a world about Hilchas Hanukkah. So now the Gemara says, my Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? Now that we talked about it for 2.5 weeks, can you tell me exactly what this Hanukkah is? One would have expected that within 2 or 3 lines after the Gemara said the word Chanuka, for example, the oils and the wicks that flicker on Shabbos and can't be used on Shabbos can be used on Chanuka. Stop. My Chanuka. What is Chanuka? The Gemara didn't do that. The Gemara kept on talking about Chanuka, and now the Gemara says, my Chanuka. What's Chanuka? We don't know what Chanuka is. We know what Chanuka is because we went to elementary school. We know what Chanuka is because our parents told us what Chanuka is. But where did your parents know what Chanuka is? Because their parents told them. And where they know what Chanuka is? Because their parents told them. You go back and back and back and back and back and back and back. And you're now in the second Beis Hamikdash, a little over 200 years into the second Beis Hamikdash. And the Greek Syrians dominate the Beis Hamikdash. and there's a war with the Chashmonoim, and Baruch Hashem, the Chashmonoim won the war, and they lit the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash again. Baruch Hashem. The next year, after the victory over the Yavanim, people are putting Chanuka menorahs at the doors of their house. And Eliezer is walking by one of these doors. Eliezer, from the Eliezer of the second Beis Hamikdash, it's a year after the Chashmonoim defeat the Yavanim. He's walking with his son or his grandson, and his son says, Tati, what is this thing in the windows here? What is this thing at the doors? What are these candles going on? And Eliezer says, you know what? We're going to have to find out. Why are people lighting Hanukkah candles? What's going on here? There is, as we explained several times, there's no book of Nevi'im. Nobody recorded what Hanukkah is. The last Navi, Malachi, lived 40 years into the second Beis Hamikdash. The miracle of Hanukkah occurred about 200, 220 years, 200, 210 years into the second Beis Hamikdash. So at the time of the miracle of Hanukkah, it's about 160 years since there was a Navi. 160 years. There's no Navi, there's no one writing books of Nevi'im. Nothing's being recorded. Yeah, but Lubling, there's a Gemara. The Gemara tells us what Hanukkah is. But what was the Gemara in those days? There were published Gemaras.
No, there wasn't.
It's called Torah Sheba'al Peh. It was an oral transmission. Nothing was written down. It was written down later because people began forgetting it. But during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, when they established Hanukkah, there's no book of Nevi'im to tell me what Hanukkah is. There's no Gemara. Nobody has even talked about writing the Torah Sheba'al Peh down. And not an issue. It's the second Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara was written down much later. So Eliezer's walking with his son or his grandson, and they say, look at this, what's going on here? There are menorahs in front of people's houses. What exactly is this? And Eliezer's son or grandson says, Tati, Zaidi, my Hanukkah. What is this Hanukkah business? I see people lighting Hanukkah candles. And it's even more than that. He probably wouldn't even know the word Chanuka. He would say to you, what are these candles? But the Gemara uses the word my Chanuka. Without this piece of Gemara, we would not have any understanding of why we light candles. We have no Navi to tell us. We have no book of Navi to tell us. It's only the Torah Sheba'al Peh tells us. And when it got written down, it became Gemara. Without this, we don't know what Hanukkah is. So Gemara now tells us what Hanukkah is. My Hanukkah. The Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in Masechta Tainus. We'll deal tomorrow, Mi'et Hashem, with what Masechta Tainus is. Megillas Tainus. What Megillas Tainus is. The Tanu Rabbanan, we learned. The Chafhei B'Chislev, on the 25th day of Kislev, Yom de Hanukkah, it's the days of Hanukkah, Tamanya Inun. There are 8 of them. The Loila Mispid Bahoy, Laileno, if someone dies, you're not allowed to say a Hesped on Hanukkah. Uda Loila His Anois Bahoy. And during the 8 days of Hanukkah, you're not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to fast, and you're not allowed to say a Hesped. This is our Gears the Gemara. Now, why? Now, this sounds like these are days of celebration. No Hesped, no fasting. What is the celebration? What happened? When the Greek Syrians entered the Heichal, do we all know what the Heichal is? Masechta Midas. What's the Heichal? You came into the Shar Mizrach to Shushan Habira. You're now on the Har Habayis. You walked from east to west, and you came to the Sorag, that little gate. You're now in the Chayil, and the Chayil has 12 steps to get into the Ezras Noshim. You're walking through the Ezras Noshim, you get to 15 steps to get to Shar Nicanor. You walk through Shar Nicanor, you're in the Ezras Yisrael. After the Ezras Yisrael, you have the Duchan that the Levium stood on to say Shira. After the Duchan, you had the Ezra's Kohanim. After the Ezra's Kohanim, you had the Mizbeach. After the Mizbeach, you had Bein Ulam La Mizbeach. The Ulam had 12 steps. You went into the Ulam. In the Ulam, there was the opening to the Heichal. And what was in the Heichal? The southern wall of the Heichal had the menorah. The northern wall of the Heichal had the Lechem Haponim on the Shulchan. And in the middle, between the menorah on the south and the Shulchan on the north, there was the little Mizbeach HaKetores. So it says, She'nichnasu Yevonim LaHeichal, when the Yevonim entered the Heichal, where there's the menorah, the Shulchan, and the Mizbeach HaKetores, Timu Kol Hashmanim Shebeheichal. They contaminated all the oil that was in the Heichal. Now, we didn't learn about this in Masechta Midos. Masechta Midos didn't tell us that they had a storage room in the Heichal where they stored the oils. And this is a question in the Mefarshim. Where do we know that there was some kind of storage area in the Heichal with oil? We didn't see that in Masechta Midos. So it says, at any rate, the Yevonim came into the Heichal. They defiled all the oil in the Heichal. And we'll talk about this more as we go through this idea, because this is a central idea to Chanuka. We talk about almost every year in Shir. Our footnote talks about it in the Pachad Yitzchak. This is a very unique goy, these Greeks. They don't want you to light the menorah. So what do? You take all the flasks of oil that you find, and what do you do with the flasks of oil? Remove them from the Beis HaMikdash, or smash the flasks on the floor and let the oil spill out. Or you take the flasks and you spill out the oil. What did these unique Yevonim do? They knew how to take each flask, how to make it tomei, and then they put the flasks nicely back on the shelf. So that if you Jewish people want to light the menorah, go right ahead, light the menorah. But you're going to light the menorah with defiled oil. Now, from a purely scientific vantage point, the light that's given off from olive oil that's ritually pure, and the light that's given off from oil that's ritually defiled is the same light. With the naked eye, you can't tell the difference if I light a Chanukiah with defiled oil or I light a Chanukiah with ritually pure oil. But this is the Greek unique goy. I'm not going to stop you from lighting the menorah. I'm going to make you light the menorah with defiled oil. So Timu Kol Hashmanim Shebeheichal. They defiled all the oil in the Heichal. Ukshegavra Malchus Beis Hashmonai v'Notzvam. And when the kingdom of the house of Hashmonai overpowered them and won the war, Budku, they searched the Beis HaMikdash for some oil, the pure olive oil, to light the menorah. V'lo matzu ela pach echad shel shemen. They only found one flask of oil. Shoyamunach b'chaysameh shel kohen gadol. It had the seal of the kohen gadol on the flask. There was only enough oil in this one flask to light one night. And then there was a problem. After that night, they don't have oil. As the Rishonim tell us, in order to get the oil and transport the oil, it took 8 days to make new oil. So if they use all the oil on the first night when they find it, which is the 25th of Kislev, they're not going to have oil for the next 7 days. Nasa bones, a miracle happened with this oil. They were able to light from this one flask for 8 days. Lashana Acheres, the next year when Chaf Hei Kislev came up, they remembered, they kept a calendar that the year before on Chaf Hei Kislev, they lit Chanuka, they lit the menorah, and the oil lasted for 8 nights. The following year, Kovim Vasom Yomim Toivim Bahal Voida. The Chachamim established these as Yomim Toivim to say Halal and Hodah. So first of all, we see that the miracle happened year one. Let's call it year one. Year one, They knew that the oil lasted for 8 days and it only had enough to last for 1 day. Did they make Hanukkah that year? Did they send out a message to everybody, next year we're going to celebrate these 8 days? No. It says Lashana Acheres, the next year. When this date came up on the calendar, they said from here on out we're establishing Hanukkah. But they didn't do it the year of Hanukkah. The next issue is the very famous issue, the Kasha, the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef asks, the Gemara says that they found a flask of oil that had enough oil to burn 1 night. A miracle happened, it lasted 8 nights. How many nights, therefore, is the miracle of Hanukkah, asks the Beis Yosef. 7. Because they found a flask that had enough oil in it for 1 night. The miracle was that it lasted another 7 nights. So how many days should we be celebrating the miracle? 7. Hanukkah should be 7 days, not 8 days. There was enough oil for 1 day.
Can you not?
So this is the famous kasha of the Beis Yosef. There were entire svarim written on this kasha. When I was, around the time I got married, I believe, they printed a sefer called Ner Lameya. I think today there's an organization called Ner Lameya. They printed a sefer called Ner Lameya, and it had 100 answers to the Beis Yosef's kasha. Several years ago, I saw in a svarim store a new print, and it now has 500 answers to the kasha of the Beis Yosef. But that's if somebody is talking to you before Hanukkah, on Hanukkah, and says, I thought of an answer to the kasha of the Beis Yosef. This is the Beis Yosef's famous kasha of Hanukkah. The Gemara says they found enough oil to last 1 night, and a miracle happened that lasted 8 nights. That means the miracle 7 nights. The first night, actually, there was enough oil to last. That's a kasha of the Beis Yosef. And then we see from the Gemara that in the year of Hanukkah itself, the year of the miracle, they did not establish the Yontif. The Gemara says, L'shon Acheres, the next year, when this time frame came up, Chafei Kislev, that year, year 2, they said, we're going to establish this as a Yontif, B'halal V'hodah. Lineta will continue tomorrow with maybe 1 or 2 answers to the Beis Yosef's kasha, some of the Rashis that we need to see, and Blineda, we will continue.